I think if you see some of the crashes in 2008, 2020 with COVID, the insurance industry and all the companies, the brokerage firms, the insurance companies, they keep trending up and to the right. And I think that resilience is key to a lot of this.
Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Zach Ewell, content producer here at Leader's Edge. In this episode of our Personal Alliance podcast series, Associate Editor Chris Hann interviews Ed Cha, Head of Global Insurance at Newfront. Cha shares why he chose to work in insurance as a career path, what he finds rewarding about his job, and dives deep into the problem-solving intricacies of his role. Give it a listen.
Okay, we are here with Ed Cha, the Head of Global Insurance at Newfront and the fairly new chair of the International Working Group at CIAB. Ed, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You grew up, you mentioned, in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, Lincolnwood, Illinois. Tell me about Lincolnwood, Illinois.
It's interesting when you live in a suburb of Chicago. I think when people ask you where you're from, a lot of people would just say Chicago. And then if you're from Chicago, they say, okay, are you really from Chicago, or what suburb are you from? It could be 10 minutes outside of Chicago, or it could be 3 hours outside of Chicago. So I'm very cautious. I think every time someone asks me that, I say something different. But the technical bit would be northwest suburb of Chicago, Lincolnwood, Illinois, right outside the outskirts, and a great place to raise a family and grow up. I have a great group of friends that I grew up with and even went to university together, and we all stayed pretty close. So feel very fortunate growing up in the Midwest and having the childhood that I did.
And you're still in the neighborhood, so to
I
speak.
am. My wife is from Peoria, Illinois,
Okay.
and that is how I came to be in this area. Technically, the city is Dunlap, something similar to Chicago. It's a suburb of Peoria. It's called Dunlap, Illinois. It's
Okay.
3 hours south of Chicago. My wife and I met at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and she's from Chillicothe, Illinois, another suburb of Peoria. So we decided to move here and raise our children here.
Okay.
So,
You've been there for how long?
oh geez, that's a great question. I've moved around so much. I would say been here about 8 years
Okay.
in Dunlap, and our oldest is 15 and our youngest is 12, two boys.
Oh
So.
boy. All right. I'm sure they keep you busy.
Absolutely. With all the travel sports and all the activities and graduations and things like that, life just goes by really quickly.
When you were growing up, what was your favorite class, let's say in high school?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say physics,
Okay.
because they would do all these experiments and things in the classroom that you could see that is actually relevant to what's going on in the world in terms of the speed of a car, how fast you have to go to break the atmosphere and get it out into outer space. And that was always really fascinating to me. So I really think it's up to the teacher to explain very complex terms into layman's terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was always very, finding a teacher that can do that and excite people into that. So.
And did you have a favorite teacher or most influential teacher, maybe I should say?
You know what? I don't want to single it out, but I would say all of them. And the reason for that is I really respect teachers in what they do and the career path that they chose and giving back to society. I think that's huge. So a shout out to all the teachers that are out there currently or studying to become a teacher. It really is the backbone of our economy and our world in terms of, where people find themselves, learn people skills, learn academics, and go to that next level. So and sometimes it's a thankless job, sometimes it isn't, sometimes it is. But there's a lot of trials and tribulations, just like any career. But I think this is one that really impacts our children from a very young age to going to university, to grad school, to PhD programs. So.
Well, my mom was a high school teacher, so I'll second everything you just said.
A lot of sacrifices, and you see
Yeah,
teachers these days spending their own money to
yeah.
help, with the classrooms and whatnot. And actually being a parent, you really see how dedicated they are, where they're not getting paid, they're getting volunteer to go to every single event. They're there, right? It's not a 9 to 5 job. They're there on
Yeah.
the weekends. They're coaching, mentoring, helping out where they can, and they're also dealing with this new generation of social media and phones and
Mhm.
devices where when I was growing up, you were cool if you had a beeper and that just had numbers on it, let alone games and things like that, and social media accounts. So it's a completely different game now, and I respect every single teacher out there for that.
Yeah, yeah. You went into college as a pre-med student. Tell me about
Correct.
that decision.
Yeah, yeah. I would say there's that drive. I have to say a lot from parents in becoming a doctor and having a successful career doing that. The first 2 years took biology, chemistry, all the pre-med courses, and really it wasn't what I loved. And you have to be passionate about it. So I took the big risk in junior year, decided to switch into mathematics and chemistry. And that is what I was naturally good at. So that's where I kind of gravitated towards. Switching junior year was tough and taking, a lot of catch-up classes and things of that nature. But I think university is one of those things where a lot of people figure out who they are and what they want to do. And a lot of people do go to university undecided. And for me, it's, I picked a major and decided to switch midway. And I was actually going to be a math professor and was going to study, go to graduate school, go get my PhD. But along that path as well, I decided to go into business. So, after going into business, one of my professors says, "Why don't you start taking some actuarial exams?" And I've never heard of what it is to be an actuary. So it was quite intriguing to me. So I took a couple exams. It helped me get an internship at CNA Insurance and Mercer, and then found myself having a full-time position at Mercer doing being in the insurance industry. And it's really funny because I always say this, no one ever says that they want to be in the insurance industry when they're a little kid. I remember going to career day for one of my sons, and I am in the insurance industry, but you have the police men there, you have the firemen there, you have the engineer, and they're explaining what they do, and you go up there like, I'm in insurance, right? That's probably the least coolest thing you could say, either at a career day or at a happy hour, right? I'm in insurance. So, but my mind has evolved in terms of, wow, this is one of the best industries in the world. It's potentially one of the oldest industries in the world, and it's one of the most stable. I think if you see some of the crashes in 2008, 2020 with COVID, the insurance industry and all the companies, the brokerage firms, the insurance companies, they keep trending up and to the right. And I think that resilience is key to a lot of this. And one of my great mentors, Brian Hetherington, which is the president of Newfront, he always quotes that insurance makes dreams happen. And it's because a lot of companies that are started, it's a mandatory thing, or something that you should get to further that company.
Sure.
If you have a car, you need car insurance. If you have a house, you need house insurance. You need business insurance, right? So if you think about it, it's one of the mandatory and critical things in any aspect of any organizations, whether it's tech, energy, oil, biotech, et cetera. So then it kind of got me thinking really like, wow, insurance really is helping the world get to a better place. There's a catastrophic loss. There's the insurance companies that are there to help out, right? So it's being very proud of being in insurance and also showcasing it to the younger generation that this is a great career path. Again, might I say the least sexiest thing to say, being in insurance, but once you drill down to it, it's such a cool industry to be in.
Did you surprise yourself when you found yourself in this industry and say, gee, this is not something I ever expected?
100%. Yes. I think it's twofold. One, I'm in insurance, and two, I in global. And those two things I never anticipated my career going into. And, let me start with the global piece
Yeah,
is,
I was going to ask you about that.
it's I've I feel so blessed that every single day, year that goes by, I feel like I'm being paid to learn. There's something that every day I learn something new about. There's no way that I could know about all the insurances in Singapore, France, Germany, Canada. And so every day is a learning experience. And I get to speak and interact with folks from all over the world on a daily basis. And you learn different cultures and intricacies. And the world just keeps getting larger and larger once you realize, like, I'm just not in this little bubble. So I think it had a profound impact on me, not only from a business perspective in being able to go into a niche industry, but also a niche specialty, but having friends and business partners all around the world. And I am so happy that that happened and feel so lucky that I fell into this. But I feel like I could go to almost any country and have a friend there that's able to take me around and help me understand the culture of that country. It also gave me a very big perspective on just life in general. Different countries' viewpoints on politics, on insurance. And it's very good to understand how people view the world in a different lens.
Hmm.
And I think the most polarizing right now is obviously, we obviously know how Americans, or at least like to think how Americans think of politics in the US. It's completely different in Canada, in Argentina, and Brazil. So it's great to get other people's insight and also communicate and inform them on what actually is happening here as well, because what they get is tidbits of social media and the press, and that could be obviously through different lenses as well.
Let me ask you about your work in the global
Yeah.
part of the industry. Is that something that you sought out? How did that happen?
Yeah, no, it's great. I volunteered for a position in the global space at Mercer when I started out in my career early on, and just fell in love with it. It was so eye-opening in that, and then once I started in that, after a few years in the space, I had one of my first mentors, Patrick Hickey,
Hmm.
who just recently retired. He was building out the international benefits practice at Wells Fargo Insurance, which was acquired by USI. So he brought me on, and we helped build out that practice over at which is now USI, and it really just opened my eyes to everything in terms of what I thought and I could assume was not really the case. So it also helped me just immensely, just personally as well, saying you can't assume anything. Something that's true in Argentina is not true in Brazil.
Hmm.
So, once I fell in love with it, I continued and knew this was my career path, and I focused on global and non-US insurances, and wanted to continue to help and be a strategic partner to the clients that I help in terms of expanding outside of either the US or outside of their home country, whether they're headquartered in France or Germany or Singapore, and helping them that way. So that really has been probably the largest passion of mine, is making sure that they know what to do, because I always say my over 2 decades of experience consulting companies expand globally really is all the mistakes that I've made. I just don't repeat them twice. And those are the things that I inform my clients on of what not to do because I've already been there and fallen on my face. So,
Somebody said if you learn from your mistake, it's not a mistake, it's a lesson, right?
yeah, absolutely. And they say if a smart person learns from their own mistakes, a wise person learns from someone else's mistakes, right? So.
What is with your global responsibilities? What is your travel schedule like?
It's interesting. Pre-COVID, I was traveling every month, probably a week at a time, back and forth to different locations, primarily to Silicon Valley, where our headquarters is in San Mateo, California. This was when Zoom and go-to meetings and things like that were not as prevalent. So face-to-face meetings. So post 2023, no, 2020, everything went video conferencing. And clients were okay with that. Internal HR people operations were okay with internal meetings going virtual. So that has been a majority shift in terms of, I would say, not just only for Newfront, but for, companies and clients, et cetera, that, what, we could just jump on a Zoom and have a conversation like we are here, Chris. And but I would say the global conferences, I still travel globally, at least one country outside of the US a year. And because it really is critical when you're doing business, whether in the US or any other country, to have that face-to-face interaction and getting to know someone because you want to work with people that you like, right? And people that you know. So having that deeper connection and being able to say, hey, I know, Chris's family, or I know Chris's mom was a former high school teacher. These things help when, you're in a fire drill and something happened and you need something done. It's, hey, I know Chris. He's just not just another email. He is someone that I actually know and I want to help out, and I'm going to get this for him right away. So, but yeah, it's been pretty brutal in terms of traveling in general as you know, airlines are overbooking and there's a lot of chaos just going through security. It's been, I would say, 20 years ago, it was a pleasure traveling commercial. And nowadays could be very stressful because you don't know how many cancellations or delays there's going to be. I think there's a high stress level when you're even just boarding the plane from trying to get your carry-on in the overhead compartment because no one wants to check a bag anymore. All the security things and going through customs. So it's been quite a turnaround in terms of, traveling, but it's still prevalent, and I think it's increasing, and I think the travel industry will continue to increase as we come out of the 2020 COVID pandemic.
And along those lines, you sent me a bio, and I thank you for that. Uh, and you mentioned that travel is something you like to do when you're not working, and I'm wondering if that interest came about through your work in the industry, or have you always been a traveler?
It's interesting. Like I remember my first backpacking trip was in when I was in university. Backpacked through Costa Rica with a bunch of my friends, and that really again opened my eyes in terms of how how small my bubble was before that. So after that, it really kind of molded who I am and finding, once I found that I could travel globally with my career where there was a business case to do that and sometimes even a requirement, it was kind of a match made in heaven. And I think one of my mantras is, instead of spending money on materialistic things, it's like I want to spend money on experiences and travel, right? So I think that was a big major shift in terms of, I think some people like myself were chasing salaries and compensation and things like that when you're younger in your career. And then when you get more mature, you start realizing, none of that really matters. And it's really the experience and how you treat the people in front of you and how you treat people when they're not there as well. And just being kind and generous and giving without wanting anything in return. So a lot of these mantras are just, kind of coincide with the career and the career path that I've chosen.
What gives you, what do you think gives you your leader's edge in this industry? What makes you an effective leader?
Another great question, Chris. I say my philosophy really always has been being a technical expert and a strategic consultant. At the end of the day, our job is to make sure that we're adding value, adding accretive value to our company and our clients. So if there's a problem or an issue that a client has, we have to solve it, or we have to know who to go to solve it. So I think the other piece of that is being an advocate for your client. Chris, if I'm a client of yours, you have a fire drill or an issue that comes up, your reputation is on the line to get that solved. You need a expert that you can go to that either can tell you what the answer is to solve that issue or know someone who can get that answer for you. You know, it could be the most random thing is how do I transport, you know, $1 million in cash from Costa Rica to the US? Or it could be I have a situation where we have an employee that was skiing in Canada and needs a helicopter to evacuate to the US. Or we have government contractors in war risk countries. How do we make sure that they're insured? Or we need, a asset with one of our employees because they're going to a high risk area. How do we get them the security and protection that they need? So a lot of these random questions and situations that come up, they need a true expert that's able to help them find that solution and knows what to do in that scenario and quite frankly available 365 24/7 a year because all the issues and again being in global our work week is Monday through Friday. Middle East, their Friday is Thursday. And with time zone differences, people are starting working Sunday night where we're just winding down on our weekend.
Yeah.
So business really never sleeps. If there's a holiday in the UK, it's not a holiday in the US or a holiday in Canada, right? So, and different religions have different holidays, different cities have different holidays. So just being able to know that you have a consultant and a leader and an expert that can get you what you need to solve an issue where they're not just trying to cause a problem. They're coming to you because they have a serious situation and they need a solution for it. So, job security, I say, is that there's so many complex issues out there in the world and they need people who have experience, have been there, done that, and don't freak out when a situation happens and knows exactly who to call to get it remedied.
That was Associate Editor Chris Hann interviewing Ed Chaw. I hope you enjoyed it. For more episodes of our Personal Alliance podcast series, go to leadersedge.com.